Hey everybody, it's Murray here and welcome back to my channel, I'm Stuart Paintings. On today's acrylic painting tutorial, we're going to paint this really realistic painting of a sunset beach. I'm going to teach you how to mix colours and create a sunset clouds, how to use colours to then create transitions in the clouds to create light, how to create transitions in your ocean water to again the illusion of light shining on it, how to go about creating realism in things like ocean waves, and then how to add detail over the top to create sea foam and waves itself, so you can paint this hyper realistic sunset acrylic painting. So let's get into it. So for the tutorial, you're going to need the following colours. They are titanium white, Naples yellow, cad yellow, matte orange, rose pink, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, phthalo turquoise, iris purple, raw umber and matte black. Now I have a burnt sienna painted canvas that I've used chalk to create an outline of a ocean sunset. So we're going to have lots of clouds here on the right, we're going to have the sun on the left, we're going to have a horizon, and we're going to paint really realistic waves coming towards the viewer. So I'm going to teach you all how to use colour, and then we're going to have some sand. So we're going to use colour to trick the eye. So while you're all copying down the outline, if you would like to pause the video, you can copy a brief rough outline. I'm just getting some cobalt blue and I'm just putting in where I want the waves to be. We're going to use very pastel colours, and we're going to combine a lot of the tutorials we've done previously to do a much more advanced tutorial. So we're going to put all what we've learned previously in the other tutorials and create a hyper realistic painting here. So all I'm doing is I'm just using cobalt blue just to put in roughly where I want the outlines for our big waves to be. And when we add the pastel colours over the top, the great thing is once this is dry, the cobalt blue, because it's a dark colour, will shine through it and we can just use it as an outline. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to block in our painting. So I'm just going to use a big blob of titanium white and I'm just going to create a sort of splodge for the sun. So this is going to be our light source, and we're going to use Naples yellow. Now don't worry if you don't have all the colours at the beginning of the list. All you have to do to make Naples yellow is get cad yellow, lots and lots of white to make it buttery, and then just add a dot of black, literally a pinprick of black, and you should get the same colour. So all we're going to do, look, we're just going to create a really white yellow. So predominantly titanium white, a little bit of cad yellow and a dot of black. And all we're doing, we're just trying to cover up the burnt sienna background. Now everyone asks me, why do I paint my canvas burnt sienna? Now I always have to say why. It's simply for the fact that when we're painting in pastel colours like we are today, by using a dark colour underneath, you can see where you've missed bits on your canvas. So if you were using white, you might not see quite clearly where you've missed areas of paint, and then later on in the painting you have to fix it. So it's just to combat that. Now what I'm doing, I'm just adding a little bit more cad yellow to the mix as we move towards the right. So if you imagine around the sun, it's going to be super bright, so our sky is really pastel, and as we move over to the right hand side, the sunlight is a little bit cooler, so we're just adding more yellow as we move towards the right and just making the colour a little bit darker, just to imply a little bit cooler sky and a little bit less sunlight. But it's still really bright because the sun's so low, because it's setting, or it could be rising, whatever you want to choose. So we've just blocked in that area. Now the problem when painting skies is if you go to blues from yellow, you get this horrible green colour. So to combat that, you can use this trick, which is using light purple. So all we're going to do, we're going to take this cool purple. Now iris purple is just a bluey purple, so you can just add blue, cobalt blue, to some purple, and we just want to add loads and loads of white to that mix. So I've got it pre-mixed. You see this lavender colour, and we're just going to add loads and loads of white to it. So if you haven't got that colour at home, I appreciate most people don't have it, you can just add a little bit of purple a little bit of cobalt blue, and then just loads and loads of titanium white, and you should get the same colour. And all we're doing, if we just use our big brush, we're just merging it into the yellow. So I'm just taking off a hair off my canvas. So all we're doing, look, we're just merging it into the yellow. And this light sort of lavender purple, what it does is it kind of acts as a buffer without turning your canvas green as we get darker and we get cooler and we add the blues. So to make the next colour, we're going to combine cerulean blue, which is more turquoise, and cobalt blue together, and again predominantly white. So to make all these pastel colours, we're just adding loads and loads of white to everything. So you're going to be using a lot of white on your canvas today. So we're just making it really, really white, just so it's really sky blue, really, really pastel. Again, I've got it pre-mixed because I'm lazy. It just saves me mixing all these colours for the tutorials and my artwork all the time if I can just buy it. So all I'm doing, look, I'm just using that purple as a little buffer so I don't hit the yellow and turn my sky green. You never see a green sky, do you? So we want to use pastel colours and we want to mix them. And again, look, all I'm doing, I'm coming into the purple. I've got my big brush and I'm just going to mix the two colours together. So look, you can even use a little bit of a purple as a buffer if you're worried, if you don't want it to hit that yellow. And there you go. So look, just use the purple, just going into the blue, and it just looks like it's fading off into the distance. Then we're going to get lots of the blue and just block in our painting. So I always use a big brush to block in because I just find it easier. It saves me lots of time and you can get lots of paint. I don't really dip my brush in that much water. I just make sure it's nice and moist just so the paint glides easier, because if it's dry it's hard to spread the paint. But I just get lots of paint and splat it on. Hardly any water. So we're going to leave the top of the painting and we're just going to mix a darker version. So again, I've got it pre-mixed, but I'm going to show you how to mix it. So we're going to get cobalt blue and cerulean blue, and we're just going to add less white. So we're just going to make a darker shade. See that? So it's the same trick, cerulean blue, which is more turquoise, and cobalt blue. And you can even add a dot of purple just to make it cooler, and you should get the exact same colour. You could even add a dot of brown if you feel funky and you want to add a dot of brown to make it more earthy. But all we're doing, look, we're just going up to the corners of our painting. And the reason we're using a darker colour is we just want to frame the painting, just to frame the corners. So just by making the corners dark, what it does is it makes the painting look nice and framed, and it makes the viewer look towards the subject. It's a natural trick. You can do it to your photos, and all we're doing, look, we're just blending it into the previous colour. So it just frames it, just makes it look a bit nicer. And you can go back to the previous colour, the lighter shade, watch, and you can just create X shapes with your brush, and you can just blend the two colours together. So look, funny X shapes, and the darker colour, if you just bring the paint down, it will just naturally blend, and it will just create that nice dark outline in the corners and at the top of the painting, and then it will just look nice and blended. Now if you can see, I'll zoom in for you, as the paint dries, look, you get all these horrible lines and canvas marks. This is why I paint my canvas burnt sienna. It's so when you're using acrylics, because they are water-based paints, they're not too thick. So all I'm going to do here, I'm just going to reapply the same colours. Now I appreciate you've just sat through watching me do all this. So I'm just going to show you some little tricks, and then I'm going to fast forward it. So if you do get streaks in your painting while you're blocking it in, and it just looks a bit haggard and not very professional, if you just dry it with a hairdryer, so your whole canvas and all your painting is nice and dry, just by adding a second layer of paint, you can remove any streaks, you can remove any horrible brush marks. It's a really good thing. Acrylics are perfect for beginners because they're so easy to use. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just trying to explain. I've used a really light yellow, and this is a much darker colour over here on the right hand side. So that's cad yellow and white, and then obviously towards the sun I've added a lot more white and less cad yellow. And all I'm going to do, just like we've done with the transition going upwards in the sky, look, I'm just blending from light to dark. So from the left hand side to the right hand side, I'm just making it naturally blend. So look, by just adding some white, we've got this light colour on the left, and we've got a darker shade of yellow that's getting less sunlight, and I'm just merging the two together. Now I'll fast forward this because obviously we've just done it, and I don't think it's very interesting for you to all sit here and watch me redo it. But all I'm doing is the exact same technique. I'm just doing the purple and white as the buffer before I put the light blue. And all I'm doing, I'm just making the transitions look a little bit smoother, and I'm taking out all the brush marks and the burnt sienna. That is an unfortunate sort of thing with acrylic paints and using pastel colours. Sometimes you just have to give them a second coat of paint just to make them look more professional. And then what I'll do, I'll put the speed back to real time and we'll paint along together. So all I'm doing, look, I'm merging the light blue, which was cerulean blue, cobalt blue, and plenty of white into that purple. So can you see as well, just by adding sometimes a second coat of paint, the vibrancy of the colours, because we want to make a really, really vibrant sunset. Just by adding a second layer of paint, excuse the light, you can make your colours look much more bright, much more pastel. And all I'm doing, look, we're just using the darker blue, which was cerulean blue, cobalt blue, and less white, and a dot of purple, just to frame the painting. And then I'm just moving back to the lighter shade, creating X shapes, and I'm just blending all the top part of my painting together. Right, so now she's dry, I'll put the speed back to a normal speed, and we're going to dry this painting and we're going to work on clouds. I'm going to teach you how to paint realistic sunset clouds, and we're going to go step by step together, and we're going to learn how to make a hyper realistic sunset. So the first thing we're going to do, we're just going to make, with my big brush, I'm just going to put in the white. So as I was just previously saying, sometimes with acrylics, because they're picking up the colour from underneath, sometimes you just have to go over them once or twice just to make them more vibrant. So because our sun, that's why we want to be extremely violent, sometimes you have to use different types of white. Now I've got 3 shades of pink. Now the top one has just got more white in it, and the bottom one has just got more purple in it. So the middle one is rose pink, and to get the lighter shade, this one, all you have to do is add lots and lots of white to it. We're going to add a teeny bit of orange to it and a teeny bit of yellow, and we're just going to make it more peachy. So we're going to use pink, white, orange and yellow, but predominantly white. So we've got our lovely pastel colours, and all we're going to do, just around the sun, if you imagine the sun's this blaring ball of heat, sort of jet white, we're just going to create really nice warm clouds. So using things like yellows and oranges, it's just to insinuate where the heat from the sun is sort of hitting these lovely clouds. But we want to keep it really pastel because I want to make this sort of dreamy and really pretty. So all I'm doing, I'm just creating shapes of little clouds. just with a smallish brush. We're going to have some quite low, and they're all pretty flat. As you get towards the horizon, the clouds are pretty straight across and they're pretty flat. So all I'm doing is just creating little lines, and as they move up, I'm just making them a little bit more wiggly, a little bit more bumpy. So what we're going to do, just like the background sky, we're going to get darker as we move up in the clouds to match the background sky transition. So if you see here, this is rose pink, and to make the first one, all we did was add lots of white. So look, to add loads and loads of white, and you'll get the pink, this one. And to get the darker shade, all you do, look, you just add rose pink itself and just add a little bit of purple just to make it cooler. You can even add a little bit of blue. It's just to add cooler colours to it. So you've got a light shade of pink, and you've got a middle shade, and you've got a cooler shade. So all we're doing, just to make this colour here, we're just adding a little bit of purple, and you can add a dot of blue, but it's still predominantly pink, still very pastel. And all we're doing now, if you imagine these clouds are sort of going round, we're just trying to make them a little bit more diagonal, so less flat, more bobbly, and more coming out at an angle. So I'm just loading my brush up, and all I'm doing, I'm just pushing down gently to create splats. And what I do to get the big splats, I push down quite hard, and then to get the sort of wispy sort of scrape against my canvas, I just ease up on the pressure just to get sort of soft edges. So look, I push down really hard to get the big blobs of paint and to create the sort of wispy bits. So look, really hard pushing down, and then to get the sort of bits that break off, I just ease up on the pressure just now, and I get hardly any paint, just enough to scuff the paint on the canvas and to make it look wispy. So look, all I'm doing, oops, I picked up the wrong pink. I picked up the middle pink, no purple. Never mind, it'll look cool, we'll just mix it in. So I'm going to add more purple to my pink as we move up into the canvas. We're moving up into the sky. So imagine these clouds are getting less sunlight, so they're going to be slightly cooler, hence the fact I've added a little bit more purple to the mix. And I'm just going to come out at random angles now. So again, all I'm doing, I'm splatting the paint on with my brush. I'm pushing down very hard to create the big blobs, and then I'm easing up on the edges to create the sort of wispiness, the sort of marshmallowness. And all I'm doing with that darker colour, I'm just going over the top here, just so the transitions look nice. But can you see already, we're starting, as we're getting cooler and we're moving towards the corner of the painting, the colours are a bit darker and it will start tricking your eye. So excuse me, I keep walking in front of the light with my big head. In London it's so dark and cold, I have to use a spotlight, I'm afraid. So if you see the light go a bit funny, it's just my big head going past the light. So look, all I'm doing, I'm pushing down and just trying to create shapes of clouds. So look, just gently scrape the canvas. Just try to create lots of little blobs and dots. You can use a reference photo. I tend not to use reference photos because I just try to use them for the colours, but I try to make these tutorials and everything out of my mind. So look, there's a big jump, just like the transition in the background, between these sort of cool pink clouds and these lovely sort of peachy clouds. So we want to kind of bridge the gap, just like we did with the background sky, and make the transitions look less harsh and more realistic. So we're going to get some of that peachy colour that we had before. And all we're going to do, we're just going to create some little floater clouds, so just some little wiggles. And we're just going to go over the bottom edges of these clouds. So if you imagine, all this is now dry. And all we're doing, we're just merging it into, we're just sort of glazing over the top and just trying to make the transitions look more seamless. So all I'm doing, look, I'm loading up my brush. I'm just going to add a little bit more pink and orange to the white. So I was just trying to make a sort of bridge tone, a little bit of purple. So I've got a colour that's not too hot, not too cold. It's in between the two colours. Just a shade darker. And I'm just going to glaze the bottom of these clouds. And what it does, just by leaving some remnants of the dark colour that we've got already there, it just looks like the sunlight hitting the base of these clouds. And the transitions, as I say, part of realism in artwork is in nature you don't notice any transitions because nature is absolutely perfect. So us as artists, we want to try to get to the point where your eyes, because they're like fantastic cameras, doesn't notice the transitions. So what we're doing, look, we're just glazing over the top and trying to make it look like the sunlight is sort of hitting the base of these clouds, and all the transitions match the background sky. And because we've got our darker corners, the darker clouds go against it, and the lighter areas, the lighter clouds go against it. So we're going to get some yellow, orange, white and pink, and we're just going to create a very warm colour, this warm orange, but I think it's a bit too harsh. It's not pastel enough for my liking. It's a bit overwhelming. So just off camera I'm just adding a tiny bit of white to it just to make it not as harsh. But again, it's the same principle. We're just using a little bit warmer colour. So it's just got a little bit of orange and pink and yellow together because these are all the warm colours. And we're just going over our darker shadow colour, that cool purple. And we're just trying to make the transitions, again, just look like areas of the clouds that are picking up some of that sunlight. Just all highlights. But we're still leaving little hints of the purple underneath and around the edges. And what that does, again, the transitions just look more nicer. And again, I'm just making this area on the right a little bit darker than on the left. So again, it just looks like it's getting less sunlight. We're just glazing over the top. Easy trick. So hopefully all these tutorials are teaching you lots of ways light works. Because as I say, a lot of the realism is in the colours. Not necessarily the skill of your drawing and your painting. It's trying to nail the colours. And if you nail them and work on your drawing and your painting, you'll be fan-dabby-dozy, you'll be brilliant in no time. So we've got this lovely transition. And then we've got the darker clouds in the far corners. So we're just going to make them a little shade darker just to make them a bit more bolder. So we're just adding more purple. So that we're going to use purple and pink. So they're still nice and pastel. But we're just adding more purple than pink. So we've just got a shade darker colour. We're going to get a little bit of raw umber, which is brown. So we're just going to make it a little bit darker. And we're just going to a little bit cobalt blue just to make it more bluer and darker. So blue and browns and purples are really good for cooling things. And all we're doing, we're just making the clouds in the top right and left corner a bit harsher and a bit darker. So again, I'm just trying to make them make the transitions look really good. We can have a little few breakaway ones, little floater ones. So once you figure out the colours, you can just create shapes that match. So you can add to your clouds. You can have little ones that break away. So look, now I know this area of the painting is going to be a little bit darker. I can just add little blobs, and these just look like little breakaway clouds. Because the colour matches, it tricks your eye. Can you see how that works? and that creates the realism. And because we've got that lovely transition in our background sky, so look, this corner is going to be really, really dark, just like our background sky. So by just using pure purple here in the corner, we can make the tips of these clouds really almost silhouetted, because they're not getting hardly any sunlight. And what it does, again, it just frames your painting, just makes your painting look more realistic. So these areas of the clouds are hardly getting any sunlight. Unlike the highlights, they're going to be really cool. So we're going to use cool colours like purples and blues to insinuate that. Here we go, fantastic. Easy peasy stuff this is. Excellent, so our background sky and our super realistic clouds are pretty much done. So that's the hard bit. And well done for everyone sticking with it and giving it a go. And we're going to work now on the transition on our ocean water. So we're going to do just like the background sky. We're going to dry our painting. We're going to measure a straight horizon using a tape measure. I always use chalk just to put little spots, and then I apply tape. So I've got a nice straight horizon. And we're going to mix the same colour that we used under the sun, which was that Naples yellow. So cad yellow, lots and lots of titanium white and a dot of black. And we're just going to make this Naples yellow, but we're going to make it really pastel underneath the sun. Go right up to your tape. So don't worry about your tape. The great thing about tape, it creates a nice straight horizon for you. So as we move, just like we did with the background sky, as we move away from the sun, the colours are going to get cooler. So we're going to use that really nice pink that we used earlier, which was just rose pink and lots and lots and lots of white. Okay, so rose pink and lots and lots of white. And we're going to add a hint of yellow and orange, just a dot of each, and a tiny bit more pink. And we're just going to create a warm pink, so that hence the fact we're adding yellow and orange to it, but still again very pastel, got plenty of white in it. So what we're trying to do, again, we don't want to have a huge jump from yellows to purples. We're going to make this sort of light pink and in between, from the hots around the sun to the cools on the beach, far away, getting less sunlight. So just like we did in the clouds, just like we did with the sky, we're just trying to match that in the ocean water. So again, look, all I'm doing, look, I'm creating my X shapes, and I'm just going back and forth between the two colours, using that Naples yellow and using that really light pink. But again, over on the right hand side, it's just a shade darker, just so it matches and it makes it look like the light is fading away from the sun. So as we move down towards our beach, we're going to use the pink and purple. So do you remember it was pink and purple? And we're going to add a tiny bit of blue to it. So we're just getting slightly cooler. So rose pink, some blue and some purple, just a hint. So it's just a tad cooler because it's not got any yellow and orange in it like previously. So we're using colours to make the tones look cooler. We're just using our big brush and we're just blocking everything in. So take your time. You just want to work on the transitions to make them as smooth as you can. And I'm just going to add, look, just some white and some yellow just underneath the sun, just again so it's a little bit warmer, and merge it into that colour. So again, look, just think of around the sun, it's going to be warmer, and as we move towards the beach we're going to get cooler. So again, we're going to add the pink and purple So look, it's even darker, and we're just merging it together with the big brush. Look at that. So as we come towards the shore, it's going to get darker and cooler. We're going to get less sunlight. So we're going to get our pink and purple, our rose pink and some purple. And we're just going to block this area in now. So all this is just much darker. So we move towards this right hand corner. And you can see the transition. Can you see how it looks so natural? You can see our lovely cobalt blue shining through as well. So we can see where our waves are. So we're just going to block in this left hand corner. There we go, it's looking fab. I'm just going to make the right hand side a little bit darker. Now, as we go towards the beach, we're going to get hardly any sunlight, so we're going to use brown, blue, purple and pink together. So brown, blue, purple and pink to create this really nice sort of musty purpley pink. Almost like a musty violet, I guess. And we're just going to make this area nice, and again a soft transition. We're just blending it into the previous tone. And this could be all the wet sand. And I'm just going to drag it towards, from the right towards, and blend it in. Because I just want to make this area where you get wet water and really shallow water and sand, they join together, they blur. So by creating nice transitions that you hardly even notice it, we're just trying to create that. We're just trying to create the water of the ocean and the beach mixing together. And plus we want to make our corners dark again, so you focus towards the middle. And also I want to sign it in this corner. So I want to make it a little bit darker so my signature sign shows up nice and bright against the dark background. So we've got this lovely fantastic transition here. And I'm just going to get some brown and blue and just add it to the mix. So just a tiny bit of brown and blue, sorry it's a bit off camera. So I'm just making it a shade darker, still got plenty of that pink and purple in it. So I'm just making it a tiny bit darker, look, just a tiny bit darker. And I'm just going over the top and making my corners a little bit darker. And this is all the sort of wet sand. So now we've got that outline. I know roughly where the water edge ends. I'm just making the sand a teeny bit darker. And the same trick here on the left, because obviously we want to sign it here. So we're just going to make this area a little bit blocky, just because I want to put my signature there. So again, look, the transitions are so good now. I'm just going to make this corner a little bit darker. And we should have complete opposites. So we should have the sunlight and the warm colours, look, this side, and really dark, cool colours on the opposite diagonal. So look at that. And we can still see our cobalt blue. So we can still see our waves, so we'll block that in a minute. But we just, now the painting is dry, because we worked on this bit earlier, we're just going to make it, as I said previously at the beginning, if you want to make areas of your painting more vibrant and to create the realism, sometimes you do just have to go over them. It's having the patience and the willpower to rework your work and go back to it until you're happy with it. So look, just making this area a bit brighter, just using the same colours. I know it's a bit repetitive, but that's the difference, as I keep saying to you, your will. Do you want to do it? Do you want to push yourself? It's like anything. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just getting some pink and lots of white, just mixing that into the yellow. I just want everything to match up. just trying to create this really lovely ocean light. And then we're just going to go add more pink and less white to the mix. So you can just blend it. It's the wonderful thing about a big brush. It's really easy to blend. Just create your X shapes. And again, just like previously when we did the sky, if you get any brush marks or burnt sienna, you can do the 2 layers trick where you just dry it and just go over the top of it. But what you want to really do is work on your transition. Try to get them as natural and as smooth as possible. So there we go, it's looking nice, realistic and smooth. So the big brush does really help. You can buy a blender brush, they are very cheap, which is the same. You just want a... Everyone asks me what brush maker I use. I don't. I just use cheapy brushes. But I just make sure that the bristles are really soft to the touch. And as I say, I just put enough water that it's moist and not too much. So we're going to remove our tape. Now don't worry if you get a bit of burnt sienna shining through, if you've just missed an area. Look, you can just go over it. And again, look, if it needs 2 coats, it needs 2 coats. Because look, it's a pastel colour. You can still see that line. You can still see, just like the cobalt blue waves, you can still see it. So unfortunately, it doesn't take 2 minutes. Just look, put the paint on, dry it with a hairdryer, just reapply the paint. It takes 2 minutes. And what you can do, this is a little trick that is really helpful, is when the painting is dry like now, you can just get the previous colour. So I'm just using a little bit of that Naples yellow. And you can soften up your horizon. So you can go where we've taken the paint off. It's actually been a little bit of a blessing, a happy accident, as Bob Ross would say. What you can do, look, once you've covered it over and dried it, you can go up to your horizon, just make it a lot more softer. So it looks, it's not as harsh, it's not just a big jump in colour. It looks like the water is fading off into the sunset. So again, the transition is really smooth. So now we're going to bring the waves towards the ocean, and we're going to use a flat-headed brush. Now, flat-headed brush is really good for using flat edges and creating waves. So we're going to get some phthalo turquoise, which is just cobalt blue and cad yellow if you haven't got it at home. So you can mix cobalt blue and cad yellow and you should get phthalo turquoise. And then we're going to add a little bit of brown to the mix, and we're going to add a little bit of the rose pink just so it matches in colour with our ocean water. So plenty of brown. And what we should do is get a green purple sort of colour. Let's actually add a little bit more purple to it, because we want a dark shadow colour for our waves. Now you can still see a hint of the cobalt blue, so I'm just trying to measure it up. I'm just trying to come at an angle. But the great thing about a flat-headed brush is you can get nice flat lines. Look, you can get nice sharp edges. It's really good to do ocean waves. So all I'm trying to do is just roughly put a line across the canvas. And don't worry if it's a little bit bobbly, you don't have to have a straight hand. Waves are never straight, they're always all over the shop. So what we're trying to do, I'm trying to make sort of a tube sort of across the canvas that comes down on one side, so where it sort of crashes into the beach. I'm just loading up my brush off screen with the paint, and we're going to have down here, we'll have where it joins onto, let's have a little wave first, it joins up, it gets all shallow and it comes up onto the beach. So let's come up here, we can have another little wave, couldn't we? So again, just go across the canvas with the brush we'll go over all this. We just want to put an outline to know where everything is going to be. So where the sun is coming down here on the ocean, the light, we're just going to use darker colours towards the beach, and we're going to use lighter colours towards the sun to imply sunlight. So by adding more pink to our mix, just here, we're just going to make it a little bit more pinky, a bit more purpley, less phthalo turquoise. We're going to make a colour that's not as harsh, but we're going to do the same trick. We're just going to go across the canvas with the flat brush and just make a wave closer towards the sunlight, so it's not as cool. And then unfortunately my camera went a bit mad here. All I did was add blue and some brown to the mix and did the opposite. So because we are closer to the beach and away from the sun, I just did an edge that is a lot darker. So we've got this blue edge at the bottom, we've got this green edge in the middle, and we've got this sort of lighter pinker edge at the top. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to mix some brown, some pink and some phthalo turquoise. And now I know where everything is, I'm just going to match that colour in the middle, which has got plenty of the phthalo turquoise in it. And I'm just going to block it in. So I'm just going to create a tube shape across the canvas. And this is going to be where the water sort of rides up and creates a wave. This is going to be the shadow part of the wave. And then we'll add some detail and some foam. So we're just going to go across the canvas, just blocking it all in. Just going to have it a little shade lower on this right hand side, just so it looks like it's crashing towards the beach. I'm just going to load up my flat brush, and I'm just going to create little angled lines coming from the wave. And these are going to be all the divots in the water, all the sort of caps of waves in the ocean. So again, we're going to create the 3D realism now. So all we're doing, we're coming out from that blocked up area, just diagonally. And we're just creating little divots in the water. And if we load up our brush, we can just create little divots going across. So just little horizontal lines. Again, try to have them random. Try to have some big, some quite long, some as little dots. Just like we did with the clouds. Don't try to have them all the same. And it just looks like the water has lots of divots in it. It just gives it texture. Now as we move towards the beach, we're going to add more blue and brown to the phthalo turquoise because we're getting cooler. And we're getting nearer to the viewer, so we want to save our darkest darks towards the bottom of the painting. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to block in another wave here. So this could be a little shallow wave just as it comes up onto the beach. But it's just a shade darker by just adding a little bit more blue and brown, just like we did with the bottom line. We can just make these sort of divots here, these waves, just a little bit more harsh to where the water sort of rolls up and comes towards the beach. And again, look, we're just going across, we're just putting our little divots, all different sizes. And if you have hardly any paint, look, you can just give the impression of little waves and marks in the water. It just makes it look more 3D, you see. And because we've got that lovely transition in colour underneath, look, when we zoom out, look how realistic that's starting to look. And it's all to do with colours. So we're going to put our tape back on. Now we've fixed our horizon and it's nice and dry. Please always dry your work before applying paint and tape. And make sure it's nice and straight. You can measure it. we're just going to put our tape back on, and we're going to do the same trick with a flat brush again, going off into the distance. So we're going to do this area here and towards the sun. So because we're going towards the sun, we're going to use warmer colours. So we're going to mix pink and orange to create a sort of tanny colour, and we're going to add a little bit of the phthalo turquoise. So pink, orange and phthalo turquoise, and it should make a sort of light browny green. You can add a little bit more pink if you want to, but what we're going for is a bit of a browny green. And as we go towards the sun, by using this orangey browny green, what it does is it makes the waves look like they're getting sunlight. So again, just like we did with the clouds, we're trying to match the light. We're trying to use colour to match the transition. You can even look, you can shade in this one, make it a little bit more brighter, a bit more like it's getting more sunlight. Now we know where it is. But it's the same techniques over and over and over again. So where we've got the waves close to the beach, they're getting darker because they're getting less sunlight. And where they're going up towards that lovely sun, they're getting more brighter, more warmer in colour. But look, we're still doing the same trick. We're just going across with our horizontal lines with our flat brush, some long, some short. So in between this colour, we're just going to add some yellow to the mix and a little bit of pink, just to make a less harsh version. As we go towards the sun, you can barely see it. It's really subtle. I'll zoom in a minute for you so you can see. But the waves, same technique, look, I'm just doing my lines. But the colour is a more golden colour. It's less harsh. And again, it just looks like it's fading off into the distance. So I'm going right up to the tape, doing the same trick. Create my little lines, my little divots. But can you see it looks like it's fading off? So look, if I zoom in for you, can you see? So we've got these harsher, darker waves at the bottom. And remember, the right hand side is getting less light. So look, we can make them a tiny bit darker, tiny bit more harsh, just so it all matches up. And if it's too harsh, look, you can just rub it with your finger. So look, same technique. Go right up to the tape. Look at that, that looks so cool. So in between, we've got this jump between the cool green phthalo turquoise and that warmer colours. So we're just going to mix a bridge colour again. We're going to mix an in between. So we're going to combine the two. We're going to combine some pink and phthalo turquoise, and a tiny bit of brown, and a tiny bit of orange. So orange and pink for heat, but a little bit of brown and the turquoise for coolness. So we've got this greeny sort of pinky colour in between. And again, we're just going to bridge the gap between the hots and the colds. So again, the transition doesn't look as harsh. So there's the subscribe button. If you're enjoying the tutorials and you want to learn more, we've got plenty of landscape painting tutorials here on my channel. So please like and subscribe if you haven't done already. Thank you so much to everyone who's liked and subscribed already and supporting the channel. We really appreciate it, because every time you like and subscribe, YouTube pushes the videos to more artists and more artists get to learn. So thank you so much, because you're helping other artists get to see the videos. So look, there we go. We're going to remove our tape, and look how realistic this looks already. This is going to look fantastic. Dun, 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 dun. Wow. So now we're going to add some detail over the top. So now we've got this lovely transition in our colour. We're going to take some of the sky colour. So do you remember it was predominantly white, and some cerulean blue and a tiny bit of cobalt blue. And we're going to make the same colour as the light shade of blue in our sky. And we're going to create some sea foam and waves. So we're adding all the detail now. So all I'm doing, I'm going to add a little bit of the highlights first, and then we're going to make some of the cool detail and combine it. So I'm trying to create the froth from the wave. So we've got our nice sort of body of the wave all blocked in. So now I'm just using a fine liner, and I'm just trying to create the illusion of a wave sort of smashing as it comes into the shore. So I'm just using a fine liner. I'm just trying to create all the froth. So there we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix a shadow colour. So I'm going to use cool colours. So I'm going to use purple, a bit of the turquoise, and we're going to use some brown, and a little bit of the cobalt blue, because cobalt blue is very, very cool. But I think because I added a bit too much turquoise and brown, it's a bit too similar to the colour we used to block in. I think we need more cobalt blue, you see. There we go. I think sometimes with colour mixing, you go for a colour, and it's not till you put it on your canvas you can see if it works or not. And I think this colour is just too similar to the colour we blocked in. You won't notice anything. So what I suggest you do you remember the colour we used at the top of our painting? So it was cerulean blue, cobalt blue, a little bit of purple, and just less white. So cobalt blue, cerulean blue, a little bit of purple, and just not as much white, and you should get this cooler, darker, cooler blue. And I'm just going to use that colour just to go underneath the bottom of the wave. So these are all the parts of the sea foam that aren't getting as much sunlight, and as they churn, as they sort of come towards the shore, they create shadow. So we're just using this really nice, cool purpley blue just to insinuate that. So look, the colour we used, remember it was the top of the painting just to frame it right at the top. So it was cerulean blue, cobalt blue, dot of purple, and just less white. You can, if you want to, add a tiny bit of brown, but I think if you add a little bit of brown, it will just make it more turquoisey. So again, look, I'm just trying to work on the transitions. I'm just trying to smooth it, the dark blue into the lighter blue, just so you don't notice as much. So there we go. So our wave is starting to take shape. And I'm just going to get some of the lighter shade. So this shade has lots more white in it, it's more pastel. And all I'm going to do is put some highlights on the top of all the sea foam. So if you imagine the light is coming from behind the wave, so all the tops of this sea foam will be getting lots of sunlight. So just by adding a little highlight over the top, it'll just look like all the wave is getting some sunlight. When we zoom out, obviously, we've got the light shining here on this wave, so it looks more white than anything, but I assure you it's very blue. I just wanted to zoom in so you can have a closer look. So I'm just adding some highlights just on the very top, just to try and create some texture. So this cooler blue, look here on the right, matches as well. So I've not done any highlights on the right hand side because I want it to look like it's fading out. And now we've got that cooler blue. What we can do is use it to create details. So if you imagine this part of the wave has got its back to the sunlight. So we're going to create some little squiggles, little zigzags. And this could be all the sort of sea foam and all the churn. So just creating little shapes as the wave crawls up. We can just add some little zigzags, and this looks like all the wash and sea foam. And again, just to create the realism. And then to create sea foam, what you want to do is you want to sort of come out diagonally. So we're just coming out away from the wave. And we're just going to create zigzags. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just creating little zigzags. I tell you what, I'll show you an easier way to do it. And that is to go to the base of the waves. So go right down to the bottom. And let's create the big, you know when a wave comes up on the shore, it creates this lovely sort of foamy edge. And then you have the shadow underneath to make it look 3D. So what if you can do, if you just outline this edge, so just outline the edge first, and then you can connect up your zigzags to make it look a lot more easier. So if you do your edge first like me, so get plenty of paint and just make the edge nice and thick to create that sort of carpet of water effect. So just go all the way across. There we go. That was fantastic. And then what we can do, this is an easier trick. If you imagine the wave is coming in sort of at a diagonal, if you create zigzags, so look, if I just create sort of wonky zigzags, and then you link it to that edge. So see the edge, we've got that lovely thick edge of sort of bubbles. Well then if you create zigzags, you can sort of link it to the edge, and it just makes it look more realistic. And because that cool blue, again, is far away from the sunset, when we zoom out, it will match our sky and it will match all our light, and it will look hyper realistic. So look, what I'm doing, I'm just creating zigzags with a fine liner. So look, I'm just creating bubbles and splodges. I'm leaving some gaps to go through the wave, and look, I'm just joining it up to that edge. There you go, look. And again, just like the clouds, just like the waves, you want to make them quite random. You don't want them all the same shape, so you can have some little bubbles, you can have some little dots. So look, just do zigzags and come up and then join some to the edge, not all of them. And that looks like all the sort of wash and churn as it comes up onto the beach. So all the transition in the underpainting, now we're putting the detail over the top. It's all tricking your eye, but it's the light, it's the colour underneath, from that yellows to the darker pink and purples in the right hand corner. Now we're putting these waves and froth over the top. Can you see how it's tricking the eye? It's creating the realism. So we're just going to link some up to the actual wave itself. Same trick. loads of zigzags, random shapes. Don't go all over your waves too much because we want them to shine through. And if you want, it's up to you. You can make certain areas a little bit brighter, you can make certain areas a little bit darker by adding more white or more purple to your mix. If you want to put some of this froth in the shade, or you want to add some highlights. And you can even go over them twice again to make them more vibrant. I'm not going to, because I think mine look alright. What I am going to do, I'm just going to make some little divots here in this dark shadow colour, just so it looks like a little wave. So just by using that blue, watching the fine liner, I'm just going to create some little edges, leaving some of the dark to shine through, and that just looks like froth and a little wave as it comes up towards the shore. Easy trick. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to mix some brown. So I'm going to get some brown and cobalt blue. So rather than use black, I had black on our list at the beginning, but I think black, because I want everything pastel, I don't want to use black. It's too domineering, it's too harsh. So mixing blue and brown together, we can create a really dark shadow colour. And all I'm going to do, look, I'm just putting little divots, just like we did with the waves, in the sand. So these are all sort of, I don't know, pebbles, and seaweed, little divots in the sand where people have walked. And again, I'm just trying to create random, I'm just trying to put some all over the shop. It's just to create the realism. So again, by using a really fine liner, you can get really sharp edges. So a multi-pack of brushes you can buy, you can get all this stuff in it. There we go. So look how realistic that looks now we've zoomed out. And just to finish her off, I'm just going to go over my white sun again. I'm just going to put some final details on her. I'm just going to make her... Now we've got everything all blocked in, we've got everything looking fantastic. We're just going to put the final details on her just to make her a finished, professional, hyper-realistic painting. So just mixing some white and yellow. Just on this area here, just wiping away some of the paint. I'm just making it a little bit smoother. Just making some of the transitions a little bit smoother. Where the yellow and the blue sort of meet, that purple hasn't kind of done its job. It's not gone green, but it's a bit of a jump between yellow and blue. So what I might do, now the painting is dry, I might get some of the blue we mixed earlier and just add a lot more white to it. So a dot of cerulean blue, a dot of cobalt blue, but really, really loads of white. So much more white than before. So it's almost white with just a hint of blue. And all I'm going to do, I'm just going to lighten up where the yellow and the blue meet. Just so it looks like a bit of sunlight's in that sky. I'm just going around the clouds. I'm just sort of glazing it. I'm just sort of going over it. I've got barely any paint. I'm just sort of shading it in. And again, it's just to make it look like the sunlight is coming through the sky. See, just glazing over the top. Got hardly any paint. So just imagine you're colouring in an area. Just making it, going around the clouds. So it's really subtle. Just makes it look a little bit nicer. just where the light's coming up. Just here. Just a little bit on the right. Obviously it's a bit more in shade over here. And then you can get some of the previous light blue. It looks like the same colour, but I think that's just the light, and just merge it in just so the transition again. Once it's dry, you won't even notice it. So there you go, look, once it's dry, you won't notice. And I'm just going to get a little bit of orange, white and pink. So orange, white and pink. And I'm just going to make these bits around the sun a little bit brighter. They've dried a bit flat. So I'm just going to make them a little bit brighter. I want that realism. I want it super vibrant, this painting. So just by going over the top, I just want to give it a second coat of paint. Just make my transitions perfect. Your painting is done when your painting is done, I always say. So always get in the habit, you're the boss, you know when it's finished. The sign of a great artist is to be intuitive. So know when you're happy with it. It's not a bad thing to keep going back and forth and making your work as best at your ability. It's being able to focus for long periods of time. That's the challenge. And not be distracted by the outside world. So I'm just going to get some yellow, but cad yellow is so bright and overwhelming. I'm just going to add a tiny bit of pink and white and a dot of orange, but more white than anything. And I'm just going to make these areas a little bit more yellow. Just again, so the transitions look good. So just by making a bit more yellow around the sun, look, if you imagine all this area is a little bit more yellow, they just look like they're fading into the sun and it's just a bit more vibrant. So again, just like we did with the orange and the pinks on the dark purpley clouds, we're just going on the base of these clouds and just making them a bit more realistic. I'm just going to mix some white and yellow, and again, look, just soften them up. I've got hardly any paint, just wiped away most paint, so that you can just glaze over the top and just make them really soft. Just taking away all these harsh edges. I don't want it so harsh. And I'm just going to get some white. Just going to poke some zigzags, some holes around the area. I think she's done. So I've signed her in the bottom left hand corner. So you've learned how to do a light effect with the sun, how to do a transition in your sky, how to paint realistic sunset clouds and match the transition with the light. You've learned how to paint a realistic ocean and how to paint a sunset over the ocean with waves, using colours to bring the waves closer and make them look 3D. You've learned how to do foam detail such as pebbles and bits on your beach, and you've learned how to create this super realistic sunset ocean landscape painting. So my name is Murray. Thank you so much for painting. There's me for painting along with me today, and I've really enjoyed painting along with you guys at home. There's plenty of landscape tutorials here on my channel, so check them out and like and subscribe if you haven't done that so already. Take care guys, see you soon for the next tutorial. Bye.